Trixie's Forest Retreat by Crow's Crow. Chapter 100. Restoration. As always, Fluttershy proved to be a wonderful listener, and had allowed Trixie to finish unopposed. Not even recounting the tale of Angel's attempt of burning down the house had gotten any argument out of Fluttershy, but it did provoke a quick promise to have a talk with him about it the next time Fluttershy found him. She only interrupted now and then to ask for clarification, especially when Trixie was attempting to explain why Druppy was being completely irrational. By then, Trixie was not quite so sure she was in the right anymore. Fluttershy's shocked expressions during her attempts to help Druppy had already shaken her confidence, even before Fluttershy asked a few damning follow-up questions, such as "Did you try, not yelling at her?" With her defense for her behavior with Druppy being picked apart, Trixie decided a change of topic might be best. She quickly brought the topic around to sharing her concerns on what might happen once her recovery was sufficient, that the mayor would have her arrested. Although Fluttershy did not appear to take Trixie's fear of an unfair trial very seriously, apparently fully convinced justice would be served, like the sweet naive pony she was. Finally, Trixie arrived at the most disturbing matter. As she told Fluttershy all about the imminent attack she was expecting from Ponyville now that Druppy would have told them Trixie's location. Strangely, it had not seemed to faze Fluttershy much. In an attempt to impart the horror, Trixie dramatically tried to describe the scene of angry ponies, carrying pitchforks and torches, storming their little cottage and dragging Trixie to a pee. And they all set it on fire and chant some weird Earth Pony tradition chant about burning witches. Trixie waved her hooves around frantically. Fluttershy's expression had slowly been changing while Trixie explained, and she looked away from Trixie as she started to shake. Clearly she was finally getting the idea, though Trixie had disliked needing to be so detailed on such a gruesome subject with her. But, to Trixie's complete surprise, Fluttershy wrung out the cutest little giggle, and tried to hide her muzzle in her hooves. Her shoulders gently shook with laughter, despite Fluttershy's best attempts at containing them. Stunned, Trixie uncomprehendingly blinked at Fluttershy for several seconds before giving her a harsh glare. Fluttershy was much too relaxed, giggling even. Trixie had expected Fluttershy to panic, so she tried to downplay the danger initially, but she'd never have expected to be laughed at. These were big issues. Why was she laughing? "You are not taking Trixie seriously at all." "Oh," Fluttershy suppressed another giggle to the best of her abilities, "So sorry. It's just, I thought you were kidding." "Where did you, get those ideas?" "Get them? This is what happens. Every pony knows that. We have to get out of here, maybe hide out at the apples, or run away. Something like that." She couldn't believe this was even a question. "So, how many ponies have you seen burned at the stake?" Fluttershy winced a little just at the notion. "Trixie's seen over. Well, Trixie's heard about it." As she spoke, Trixie looked out the window, checking for any late-arriving angry mobs, and, more importantly, avoiding Fluttershy's gaze. From the corner of her eye, Trixie saw Fluttershy staring at the couple of books that she had deemed safe enough not to hide from her. "You've heard about it? How many cases can you recall specifically?" That's not important. Why does it matter how many Trixie can name off the top of her head?" Fluttershy spread out one wing and ran the primary feather over the spine of a book in the middle of the pile. "And, what about stories?" A blazing fire seemed to rise up through Trixie's neck as she came to realize what Fluttershy was aiming at, and the worst part was she couldn't really argue with it. "A couple, maybe. Look, just because it happens in books and stories doesn't mean it doesn't happen in real life." Fluttershy flinched and snapped her wings back to her sides, quickly shaking her head. No, of course it may have happened once, somewhere, but I just don't think any pony in Ponyville ever would." Trixie crossed her forelegs over her chest and frowned. What about the ponies that tried to attack Trixie? Who knows what they'd have done to Trixie if Big Mac hadn't been there. Hiding behind her mane, Fluttershy whispered, "Yeah, you think they'd have burned you?" "Well, no," Trixie admitted. "But they could have killed Trixie." An involuntary tremor ran through her body as she thought back to how frightening it had been, how helpless she had felt. Biting back tears, she directed her attention to Fluttershy again. If it was just Trixie, that'd be one thing. Trixie might escape, but what if? What if they decide to take care of the other witch while they're here? Fluttershy tilted her head confusedly. I'm sorry. What do you mean?" Trixie just stared at Fluttershy meaningfully, causing Fluttershy to wilt and lay her ears flat. "Oh. Did Rainbow Dash tell you?" After receiving an affirming nod, she sighed. So she shouldn't have done that. Trixie, outwitted her. She didn't intend to tell Trixie. It's just Trixie, deduced it, then tricked her into telling the rest. Trixie's rambling halted as she saw Fluttershy smile at her. "It's okay. You don't have to cover for her. I'm sure she only told because she thought it was better if you heard it from her. It's, silly, isn't it?" Fluttershy gave an awkward, sad chuckle. "But since you know now, it was never any secret where I was, and, well, no pony has ever tried to come here to hurt me, so." She trailed off and just looked at Trixie. "You are saying Trixie will be safe here, because if they were too scared to come here and deal with just one witch all this time, then there's no way they'd try to tangle with two." Although the idea was completely outrageous, Trixie found the notion that the town's ponies were as scared of her and Fluttershy as she was of them strangely comforting. "Oh. No. Fluttershy frantically waved her hooves while shaking her head as though she were physically fighting the concept of. "I just mean the ponies aren't as bad as you think. Nah, not that they are scared of me. Of us. They're just nice. Or, nicer." Eyebrows raised, Trixie truly doubted any claim that the ponies were any nicer than she gave them credit for. She had witnessed their darkness first hoof after all, such as how quickly they could turn on a pony, even their own fellow town's ponies. Still, she couldn't bring herself to go kicking against whatever delusion Fluttershy had convinced herself to interpret their actions as. It was obviously some sort of coping mechanism. Yes, of course. How silly of Trixie. They are just good ponies who had never tried to lead some kind of witch hunt. She forced a laugh and waved a hoof dismissively. Trixie doesn't even know why she was thinking that before. Tilting her head, Fluttershy sat stunned with a confused look on her face for a couple of seconds, ending with just a smile and nod. "Oh, good. So, are you okay now? About the poo, I mean?" "Yes, thank you." Trixie just needed a alternative view on the situation. Sure, it had not been exactly how Trixie had pictured the outcome of the conversation, but she had to admit she was feeling much better with this new outlook on her life. Even if it hadn't really been her intention to be feared, and the prospect worried her a little in terms of getting anything done later. In particular, she could think of at least one pony who was clearly afraid of her. That shouldn't be. "So, what do you think about Drabby?" "Well, she seems afraid of you, now." Something in Trixie's face must have betrayed that the comment hurt, as Fluttershy quickly rambled on, but that's okay. It's only a misunderstanding, right? So you just need to talk to her." Trixie groaned, exasperated. That's what Trixie has been trying to do all this time. It doesn't work. How is Trixie supposed to tell her anything if she just keeps thinking Trixie's mad at her? If she'd relax, this wouldn't be so excruciating. Trixie? I know you're frustrated, but, could you maybe not Yell? If you don't mind, that is. Fluttershy asked, mostly hidden behind her mane. To her credit, she managed to remain on the couch, despite Trixie's outburst. Right. So sorry. It's just... Trixie hates this. She tried to talk to her several times, but it always backfires somehow. Trixie slumped against the back pillow of the couch, laying her head back to stare up at the ceiling. She loathed herself for scaring Fluttershy too, but it was difficult to pay attention to how she spoke sometimes. It had never been a problem before, or at least not one that Trixie had cared about. It's okay. Fluttershy soothed, thoughtfully tapping her hoof against her chin while she pondered. Fluttershy mused quietly, a dark alley, the hospital, the edge of the ever-free forest. Perking up one ear, Trixie glanced over at Fluttershy. What? Oh, I was just thinking. It might not be entirely your fault. I mean, not that it is mostly your fault, or, no, I'm not saying it is but, Fluttershy stuttered, and pointed to the door. I just mean, you never met Ruby somewhere that she felt comfortable. All three of those places are kind of scary all on their own, right? With a twitch of her eyebrow, a tinge of annoyance sparked inside Trixie, but it mostly died when Fluttershy actually offered an interesting point. Come on. Her curiosity piqued. She quickly sat up straight. Well, maybe it would be better if you spoke to her somewhere she felt safe. If she's in her comfort zone, she won't panic so easily, and you could apologize to her. Fluttershy gave a hopeful smile. That could work. Trixie returned the smile. Yes. It's genius. Trixie just has to talk to her when she's comfortable. Of course it had been a brilliant idea to talk to Fluttershy about how to deal with a scared pony. She had tons of experience. Thanks, Fluttershy. Oh, but, where? This is the most comforting place Trixie knows, and it didn't work. A blush shimmering through, Fluttershy nodded. I'm happy you think so, Trixie. Well. Droppy doesn't, live here? Maybe we could go and visit her at her home? I'm, pretty sure she doesn't have a cloud home, because of Dinky. Right. A pony would naturally feel more secure at home. Trixie paused, although these days she often considered this place to be her home, and really wanted it to be. She knew deep down that it wasn't. It was solely Fluttershy's. Trixie merely recovered there in lieu of the hospital. However, had Fluttershy just let on that she considered this Trixie's home too? A warm feeling ignited in her chest, and quickly fanned out upward to her cheeks. A lovely, glowing emotion left her happily grinning like a complete idiot. She could feel her tail attempting to wag a little, and did her best to squish the urge down. Despite her best efforts, Trixie failed, and she hoped Fluttershy didn't notice what her rebellious tail was trying to indicate. She worked to at least sound natural as she continued the conversation. Trixie approves of this plan. So, where does Droppy live? I'm not sure. Fluttershy's tone of voice felt a little off, and she preemptively hunkered down on the couch. But, I'm sure that Mare would know. It was as though a bucket of ice water had been dropped on Trixie, chilling her to the core as she gave Fluttershy a look of disbelief. What? Trixie can't ask her. Haven't you been listening? She's the one that's trying to have Trixie arrested or locked up or something. Surprisingly, Fluttershy didn't shy away as Trixie ranted, giving her an empathetic look instead. Don't you think that, it's better to get it over with? At least you'd know what the, result is. You're just eating yourself up over it now. I just think you'd be happier. Happier? But, what if Trixie is thrown in jail? Or banished? Or burned? Or, in the middle of listing off her nightmares, Trixie's breath caught as she suddenly felt Fluttershy pull her into a hug. Holding Trixie in a warm embrace, Fluttershy was so close to Trixie that even her whispered voice was loud and clear. Or what if you just have to pay a fine? Or do a little community service? Or promise not to lie again? If you turn yourself in, that might even help. She slackened her grip, pulling away just enough so she could lock eyes with Trixie. Won't you please consider it? Trixie should have loudly protested, to push Fluttershy away and scold her naivety, but instead all she could do was return the hug. While Trixie was held snugly in her embrace, for some reason it was impossible to think of all the fears she had a moment ago. All she cared about was the sweet mare that made her heart beat so rapidly that her only fear was that it might explode. After inadvertently assaulting Fluttershy in the kitchen, Trixie was sure Fluttershy wouldn't be comfortable with having her close again for a long time, if ever. Rarely had she been so glad to be wrong. Trixie could feel Fluttershy's warm breath on her lips. She was so close, and staring almost expectantly at her. It would be so easy to just inch forward a tiny bit. Trixie? No. Snap out of it, Trixie. With every ounce of willpower she possessed, Trixie forced herself to stay put. She couldn't make the same mistake twice, betraying Fluttershy's trust and pushing her boundaries again. As she wound down, she became vaguely aware she was supposed to be giving an answer, and slowly nodded. Yeah, yes. But only for you, Fluttershy. Blushing, Fluttershy shot Trixie a delighted smile. That's wonderful. Oh, I just knew you'd be brave. Now, is there anything else you want? To talk about, I mean. Without thinking, Trixie eagerly nodded. There definitely was something Trixie could think of that she wanted. After the clarification registered with her, she faltered. She could perhaps still venture to ask about it, but she was scared of pushing Fluttershy too far too quickly. The great and fearless Trixie, would like, she drawled while her eyes darted across the room, looking for an excuse until they settled on the table. To know what this L letter is about. Yes, that. She pointed to the simple, folded letter that had come with her books. It's for you. Trixie didn't read all of it. Didn't read it. Trixie means she didn't read it. If only she wasn't such a magnificent liar, then maybe Fluttershy wouldn't have released her to go get the letter. At least the look of concentration on her face while she read the letter was cute. Oh, it's from Twilight. She says Rainbow Dash asked for your books, and she is sending them here. Oh, I guess you knew that already, sorry. Trixie just smiled impishly. There may have been some subtle hints Trixie has picked up on. Talking to Fluttershy had worked out much better than she thought it would. Although she was not exactly thrilled with her suggestion to turn herself in, it made a certain amount of sense. If any other option presented itself however, Trixie had little doubt she'd go with whatever it was instead. A content smile found its way to Trixie's lips when she found the most pressing worries in her mind were now much more manageable ones, like ensuring she figured out something fun to do with Fluttershy, how much she missed having Dashy interrupting her every 5 seconds, and some looming sense that she'd have to figure out how to make a living at some point. Maybe she'd share that last one later, there was no rush. Giggling softly, Fluttershy read on, showing a puzzled frown. Oh. Trixie. Did you have any, weird books? She looked at Trixie over the edge of the letter. With her face set ablaze, Trixie stuttered and stumbled, embarrassed to death that Twilight would mention such a thing in the letter. No. Of course not. Maybe some, reading material unfit for falls, but that isn't weird. And Trixie is sure Twilight has some too. Fluttershy blinked, and glanced at the letter again. Oh, okay, it's just that she says she gave all the books back, except one that had a weird magic field. She just wants to run some tests first. Also. There were Ones that were destroyed beyond our repair. I'm sorry, Trixie. Twilight did her best, but they didn't all survive. A weak, involuntary chuckle rose from Trixie's throat before she even became fully aware of it. Ha, ha. What? She must have misheard. It couldn't be true, not now. Passing the note to Trixie, Fluttershy got off the couch, offering an encouraging smile. Oh, please don't worry. I'm sure Twilight will be able to help you find copies of the books you liked, Fluttershy said, then made her way into the kitchen. I'll get lunch started, or, finished. Could you set the table, please? It was a fair bit past lunchtime already, but her rumbling stomach was the least of Trixie's worries as she made some vague affirming noise while snatching up the letter. Dear Fluttershy, you are probably wondering right about now why there is such a big package on your doorstep. You see, a couple of days ago, Rainbow Dash crashed through my window, visited the library, and requested I fork over what remained of the books recovered from the stage wagon that was destroyed during the Ursa Minor attack. Naturally, my first instinct was to check her for any concussions with her if I had understood her correctly. The books had been delivered to the library, though how she came to be aware of this, and why she wanted them, I do not know. Either way, I had come into possession of them earlier that week, and properly filed them away, precise alphabetical order, then library style, first word, excluding the A or N. With the exception of a number of books either too badly damaged, or books in need of repair. However, due to Spike misplacing the checklist, I gave it to her. She just doesn't remember S. I was unable to find them all on the spot, and promised I would have them delivered to our house. In what I assumed to be a gambit to reserve her cool reputation, she instead demanded I had them delivered at your address. I hope it does not inconvenience you. Please note that some of the books may be of a poor sensitive nature, which I was not aware of at the time, and it may be best to leave the books wrapped up until Rainbow Dash retrieves them. I don't know how Rainbow found out about this, but no matter what books happened to catch her interest, I'm just happy she's taken any interest in reading. In the likely scenario event that she only takes the books that she was too embarrassed to ask about with her, could you send the remainder back to me? Addendum. In a happy accident, last night's storm led to an impromptu sleepover at the library with Rarity and Applejack. It was so much fun that I am thinking about making it a regular event, but they seemed less enthused by this offer. I thought perhaps it would be a good idea to poll the rest of our friends. What do you think? But I'm getting off track. During the night, I paradoxically recovered my checklist due to the tree crashing through my roof, sudden strong drafts in my bedroom making a complete mess of everything. Also, I learned that Trixie may still be in Ponyville, and that Rainbow Dash knows where she is. I suspect the books are probably for her. Because of this, I will make sure to restore all the books I can before sending this. Addendum 2. I regretfully have had to declare several books as unrecoverable. I know this must be a very painful experience for Trixie. Please give her my condolences. Also, during the restoration process, my weather damage detection spell picked up some strange magical interference from a book titled The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I've decided to hang on to the book for a little while, so it will not be included in this shipment. Originally I thought it might have been some kind of transmogrification spell, but almost all reversing spells that I know have not paid off. Still, I am almost sure I am not looking at the real book. Come to think of it, it might be some type of illusion spell. Well, I never really had to study that school, Spike. It always struck me as a better idea to just learn how to really do something, as opposed to learning how pretend I could do it. It's just pointless, but maybe I should brush up on it. I'm really curious now. Wait, why are you still Ritty? She never gives any kind of sign. Hey, Fluttershy? Could you do me a favor and destroy this letter when you get it? Twi wants me to edit it till it looks proper, but it's only a note. Thanks. S. Your faithful friend, Twilight Sparkle. Chapter 101. Rant. Staring blankly at the letter, Trixie's whole body felt numb. No. This can't be happening. Not now. Why couldn't it be destroyed? Slowly, she raised her gaze to the kitchen door, allowing the letter to fall to the ground. Just a moment ago she had been all but starving, looking forward to whatever Fluttershy would come through the door with, but now, her stomach felt like lead. It's all over. Maybe it would be best if Trixie just told Fluttershy herself. No, what's the point? Eyes watering, Trixie slumped down on the couch, folding her hooves over her head in a futile attempt to stave off reality as it came crashing down. Twilight had her book, and knew of the illusion. The letter was at least a day old. There was no way she hadn't figured out what it really was by now. There's nothing Trixie can do. It wasn't fair, but then, nothing in the world ever was. Especially when it came to the cards he'd like to deal Trixie. Trixie whimpered into the couch pillow. All she wanted to do anymore was just lay there. Idiot. Weakling. Failure. She twitched an ear at the last deprecation. For whatever reason, it made her think of Dashi. What would she think if she saw Trixie giving up without a fight? No. Pushing herself away from the couch, Trixie quickly wiped her cheeks. No. Trixie is not taking this lying down. Trotting quick circles around the table, Trixie pushed her mind into overdrive. Okay, first. If Twilight knew, Trixie would not be here right now. The letter says she doesn't really know illusion spells. That's good. Even if she's crazy powerful, she can't just brush up on an entire field of magic in a couple days. The enchantment should hold out for a little while. Trixie has time. All she had to do was use the time, and come up with a plan, or make something up on the fly. One thing was for sure, Trixie had to finally do what she had been putting off for as long as she'd been here, talk to Twilight. She mentioned that she filed the other books, so that must mean the book is in the library too. If Fluttershy is right, the ponies won't attack Trixie, but that's assuming a lot of things. Never mind. This is no time to think about avoiding risks. Get to Twilight's, spin some story, get a book. She knows something is up. What is a reason to hide a book? Freezing in her tracks, Trixie called out, "A diary." Trixie? Did you say something? A familiar, sweet voice rang out from the kitchen. At about the same time, there was a rapid series of knocks on the front door, sounding oddly musical. Nothing. Trixie had to fight to keep the panic out of her voice while she stared at the front door in terror. Oh, could you, get the door, please? I'll leave it to Trixie. Trixie's attempt to swallow felt like scraping a dry log through gravel. Fluttershy obviously believed there was nothing to fear, as she so casually asked Trixie to tend to the visitor, but Trixie was practically sure this was her end. Holding the doorknob for as long as possible, she quietly hoped that whoever was there would give up and leave. If only they hadn't been so loud, then maybe they could have thought no pony was home, and left them alone. Perhaps they still would? A second round of knocks shattered that little delusion. With a shaking hoof, Trixie opened the front door. What? Bouncing in place right before her eyes, was a pony with one of the craziest poify manes Trixie had ever laid eyes upon, colored head to hoof in the most eye-blistering pink tones known to ponykind. Hi. I'm Pinkie Pie. I'm only allowed 30 words around you. So, I'll need this back in like 32 weeks. Oh. Even better. You could just give it to Rainbow. Out of nowhere, a kitchen timer sound rung out, shaking Pinkie Pie's head as though it was what made the sound. Raising a hoof to her head, Trixie's temples throbbed while she tried to make sense of what she was looking at. What? Pinkie Pie looked at her wrist, which was completely bare, but apparently whatever she thought she saw was not to her satisfaction. Frowning as though displeased for a split second, Pinkie then looked at Trixie and grinned widely before raising up on her hind legs. Reaching behind her back, she pulled out a solid black piece of fabric, tied in a bundle, and gave it to Trixie. Pinkie Pie then made goodbye gesture, before literally bouncing off down the road as though the gravel path were just a particularly amazingly textured bouncy castle. What? When the bouncy Pinkie thing was out of sight, Trixie could only conclude that she had to be delirious, and promptly turned around, heading back inside the cottage, shutting the door behind her. Ever so slowly, she glanced down at the black bundle still magically held to her chest. Pulling on the string that held it together, the bundle folded out into a black catsuit, complete with hood. What? That was delicious. Trixie is glad you were still able to use the eggs, Fluttershy. Trixie smiled while she floated the dishes into the kitchen. Oh, well, you worked so hard on them. It just didn't feel right to let them go to waste. Fluttershy smiled, rinsing off the plates. After Trixie's run-in with what she had always assumed to be some fictional character Rainbow Dash liked to make up stories about, it had taken her a while to get her head back in the game. Fortunately, lunch had been just about ready, and a good meal had done wonders for Trixie's powers of reasoning. Not that it helped much with making sense of what happened, and Trixie had decided to just throw the suit into the closet next to her books and forget about it. There were more pressing matters that demanded her attention. Fortunately, she was much better equipped to handle them now. It was amazing how much difference a full stomach made. Fluttershy, Trixie has a request, she said, while taking the cleaned plates to the cabinets. Oh? I'll try. What is it? Trixie wants to visit Twilight today. To thank her for the books, and, well, for saving Trixie. She allowed her voice to crack at just the right time. Trixie was not very nice to her last time we met. Fluttershy looked up from the dishes, surprise written over her face. Oh. Yes, if that's what you want. But, I don't think Rainbow Dash will be here today. Are you sure you are okay with just the two of us? I mean, with all the... Well... Smiling, Trixie shrugged. It was just paranoia speaking. Trixie is sure you are right, and no pony will try anything against us. It's high time that Trixie stopped hiding from phantoms. With a flick of her horn, the last of the dishes was safely stored away. In fact, Trixie is so sure. Could you just give her some directions? It's probably better if Trixie speaks to her alone anyway. No, I'm sorry, Trixie. Fluttershy shook her head, catching Trixie by surprise. But, I'd be happy to guide you there. I hope you don't mind. I'd be so worried if I knew you were out all alone. It was a kink in her plan, but only a minor one. Sure, Fluttershy. Thanks. Oh, this works out well. Maybe you could show Trixie around Ponyville a little bit afterwards? Are you okay, Trixie? You don't have to prove anything. I believe you when you say you're not scared anymore. Fluttershy briefly bit her lip, then turned her attention back to the dishes, only to find they were all gone. Oh. Too much? We'll see how it goes then. Trixie slid beside Fluttershy, and continued. Trixie would like to at least know where the library, spa, and mayor's office are. Snaking one hoof around her, she added in a sly tone, and, maybe a restaurant you like. Trixie watched with a grin as she saw Fluttershy hide behind her mane, but Trixie was pretty sure her ears were turning telling her you of pink. Against her every instinct, Trixie pulled away, leaving Fluttershy her space. Trixie is ready when you are, Trixie said, as she casually trotted back into the living room. Trixie stared up at the Golden Oaks Library. A tree, hollowed out one way or another, yet somehow still green, and furnished with all the trappings one would expect to see had it been any other building. Just from a glance, Trixie could tell it was a place Fluttershy might have given her left hoof to live in, had it been located anywhere less populated. Part of her had to wonder if the leafy cottage had been inspired by this library. Trixie was glad to have finally arrived. Stretching her aching limbs, Trixie resolved that perhaps she'd been doing too much walking these past 2 days. More importantly than that, Walking through the streets made her feel nauseous and jittery without Rainbow Dash nearby. As wonderful as Fluttershy was, Trixie did not think her capable of smacking a pony upside the head at a moment's notice if she needed to. Still, she had to take the risk this time. "Do you like it?" Fluttershy asked. Trixie shot Fluttershy a smile, then shrugged her shoulders. "It's nice, but Trixie is not a fan of its location. So, this is the place, right? Twilight Sparkle actually lives here?" A brief nod was all the confirmation she needed to knock on the door. "Spike?" "Yeah, I'm on it." The voices coming from inside were vaguely familiar, though Trixie was sure she wouldn't have recognized them had she not already been told what to expect. Trixie impatiently tapped her hoof while she waited for some pony to answer the door already, taking the time to look around. Although they had avoided the market streets this time, Trixie was surprised by how few ponies they had actually met along the way. As Fluttershy had suggested, nothing bad had happened. The worst they'd gotten was a stray glare, and the pony might have just suffered from indigestion, though Trixie was not convinced. One thing was for sure, Ponyville had succeeded in humiliating Trixie once again, by making her look like a fool to Fluttershy for being so scared of walking through the streets. Perhaps that was their plan? Make her look crazy while luring her into a false sense of security. Before she could think any more on it, the door opened, and a small dragon stood before them. "Hey, Fluttershy Woodbury." "Whoa. Trixie? What's she doing here?" Trixie remembered him now. He was the instigator, goading his friends to upstage her. Oh, she had things to tell him, all right. She could tell him exactly what she was doing here after his meddling, but now was not the time. Swallowing the bitter mouthful of verbal venom she threatened to spill, Trixie put on her best smile. "Oh, you remember Trixie? You're Spike, right?" As if she would have remembered his name had it not been shouted loud enough for half of Ponyville to hear just now. From the corner of her eye, Trixie noticed Fluttershy smiling at her. "Yeah. I am." Spike folded his arms over his chest as if to say what of it. Obviously, he didn't trust her. Trixie resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "Is ya? Owner? Here?" Trixie ventured a guess. She had heard of the upper class keeping some of the strangest pets, and it wouldn't surprise her to learn that Celestia's Protegea had a pet dragon, much. Narrowing his eyes, Spike glared at her for a long moment, then turned his attention to Fluttershy, and gave her a questioning, though much friendlier, look. "So, I guess you're here about the books, Fluttershy?" Pointing at Trixie with his thumb, he said, "I'll get Twilight. I'm sure she'll be real interested in your pet." "Yeah, yes, oh, but, no. Trixie's not." Fluttershy tried to clarify, but Spike just winked at her and turned to fetch Twilight. Though Trixie glared at Spike in retaliation, he had unsportingly turned away from her, so he couldn't see, and ran back inside the library. "Coward. What a cute dragon," Trixie forced out through grinded teeth. "Just too bad he's so lively." "Oh, I'm so sorry, Trixie." Fluttershy tapped her tail as she entered the library ahead of Trixie. "Please don't be mad. They don't know anything yet. Maybe I should have gone ahead and explained first." Upon reflection, Trixie concluded that perhaps this had been what had taken Fluttershy so long when she went out to talk to Rarity. If the dragon's reaction was anything to go by, then it would take some convincing to get any pony to talk to her. "It's fine. Trixie does not need help with this." The inside of the library, or Twilight's house Trixie supposed, was surprisingly roomy. Shelves had been carved into every available space on the wooden walls all around them, housing hundreds of books. Curiously, dozens of books were strewn across the floor in a disorganized pile as well. "She's what?" yelled Twilight from somewhere below. Apparently, the tree had a basement, which was a strange thought. "Why didn't you say so?" A moment later, a slightly bewildered-looking Twilight showed up. Hey, Fluttershy. Trixie. Spike followed closely behind Twilight, still looking vaguely annoyed at Trixie. However, now it was a shared burden, as Twilight earned herself the same RFL stare. Perhaps it was not something personal after all. Twilight. Trixie gave a small nod in greeting, then held her tongue. Trying to ignore the sudden dry feeling in her throat, Trixie did her best to smile while she looked Twilight over for any sign of how much she already knew. Glancing from Trixie to Twilight, Fluttershy shuffled uncomfortably in place. "Hi, Twilight. Sorry for dropping in like this. I hope it's not a bad time. Are you busy?" "You look busy, I'm sorry," she mumbled, allowing her mane to cover half of her face again. Trixie smirked, watching Fluttershy look even more nervous than she was herself. It was too bad she was so prone to hiding her sweet face. Without really thinking about it, Trixie reached out and brushed Fluttershy's mane to the side. "Relax, Fluttershy, it's a public library. It's her job to be busy with us." As Trixie exposed her, Fluttershy ate quietly, nodding faintly in response while they locked eyes. Twilight raised her eyebrows. "Oh, is it?" she asked with an annoyed tone, but her own attitude seemed to surprise her, especially when Fluttershy shrunk away and gave her a look somewhere between trepidation and apology. Twilight's expression softened the very next moment. "Ah, I'm sorry. Well, I wasn't expecting any pony. Would you like some tea? Spike was just making some." "I am?" "Ouch, hey," Spike said, rubbing his left arm after a swift tap from Twilight's hind leg corrected him. It drew his gaze first to his owner, who directed him to Fluttershy with a brief nod. Apparently he caught on. I am. It's tea time." Trixie observed the pair of them, until a soft nudge on her shoulder caught Trixie's attention. Fluttershy briefly met her gaze, then looked at Twilight and Spike again. Fluttershy whispered, "Yeah, you're, glaring." "What?" "Oh." Trixie quickly forced a smile before turning back to Twilight. She just caught sight of Spike as he disappeared through a doorway, most likely leading to the kitchen. "Tea. What good timing. Shall we then?" "Right, so, follow me," Twilight said, leading the two of them towards another room. This one consisted of a fireplace, a small table, and once again, shelves upon shelves of books. Apparently, this was where Twilight entertained guests. Although it looked like part of the main library as well. Does she not have any rooms without books? Must be hard to figure out what rooms are public and which are private. As Trixie attempted to keep track of the layout of the treehouse, she was pleased to find it was not all that complicated so far. The main rooms on the ground floor were simple, large, open areas with little to hide but a few staircases and doorways. To Trixie's surprise, there were few actual doors. She had only counted two, the front and back door. An awkward silence hung over the table they'd gathered around as they waited for the tea. Fed up, Trixie decided to just get it over with, starting with the most recent thing. "So, Twilight. Thanks for, taking care of Trixie's books." To be honest, Trixie never expected to see them again. Twilight perked up. "Oh. No problem. I'm sorry I couldn't fix all of them. But, I think I may have copies of a few here at the library. I could try to order some of the, others, if you like." Suddenly, and while clearly making sure to avoid eye contact, her face gained a pink tinge. A few long moments passed once again in uncomfortable silence. "What's taking Spike so long?" Almost just as eager to avoid the topic as Twilight was, Trixie nodded. Yes. Taking forever." "Oh, should I help him?" "He's just a baby dragon," Fluttershy offered with a spark in her eye and a surprising eagerness in her voice that she usually reserved for animals, though Twilight didn't seem fazed by it. "He can handle it, but I'm sure he'd like a little company," Twilight said, smiling while she nodded to the doorway. Fluttershy was nearly halfway across the room before she apparently recalled there had been other ponies at the table she left. "Oh, sorry, I'll be back soon." Giving a bemused smirk, Trixie waved her off. "What is it with you and ill-mannered creatures? Go on then." Trixie demands honey in hers, remember that. Fluttershy opened her mouth to respond, but quickly clamped it shut as a red tinge graced her cheeks. She then quickly turned and headed for the kitchen, leaving Trixie a bit confused. Trixie had a hard time looking away, and allowed her gaze to linger. She traced over Fluttershy's wings with her eyes, and only felt a slight bit of guilt as she watched the Pegasus' shapely flank turn a corner and exit her sight. Ahem. A rosy warmth glowed inside her cheeks while Trixie turned her attention back to the table. Despite her embarrassment, she was unable to stop smiling. It was her first genuine smile since she'd left the cottage. Locking eyes with Twilight again, two things stood out to Trixie. First, that the temperature of the room had suddenly dropped. Second, any semblance of a smile Twilight had before was gone. "Oh, great. She's got an eye on Fluttershy, doesn't she? Gah, Trixie would give anything not to have to deal with it now." Figures that Trixie would step into a minefield the second shish. "So, why are you really here? Or that? Is it too late for Trixie to go back to the love rival thing?" Chapter 102. Recant. As soon as Fluttershy had left the room, there was a sudden shift in tone. Pleasantries, however awkward they had been, were immediately dropped. In some ways Trixie felt it was a blessing, as it had been just a facade of friendliness. Now she had a much better idea of where she really stood. From the outset, Trixie knew just stopping by for tea and biscuits had been an idea doomed to fail. It was the best-case scenario, and she had never had one of those hoofed over to her, so why would she expect this time be any different? As far as Trixie was concerned, Twilight was part of an ongoing effort to ruin her life. If she was a willing or unwilling part of that effort didn't matter to Trixie. Trixie knew that to Twilight, she was just another minor villain. One that, unlike the others, had the poor manners to stick around after being defeated. All the other villains that Trixie had heard about, Nightmare Moon, Gilda, and the Dragon, each had skipped town moments after their downfall. Trixie had to assume that Twilight didn't quite know what to do with her right now. And uncertainty was an opening Trixie knew how to exploit. Either she still holds a grudge over Trixie putting on a show, which would be ideal, or she actually did manage to break the illusion already. There's no way she could have though, is there? Even Trixie can't be that unlucky. "What do you mean, why are you really here? It's not nice to put ponies on the spot like that, but..." Trixie paused and rubbed her elbow nervously, avoiding Twilight's gaze for a moment. "I know we started off on the wrong hoof, but I was hoping we could. Well..." She met Twilight's eyes again. "Be friends?" If Dashy and Fluttershy were right, then the study of friendship was why Twilight was in Ponyville. Trixie could only hope that this was good enough bait to lure Twilight away from her suspicion. The completely flabbergasted look on Twilight's face was priceless. Her mouth hung open and her eyes attempted to take over her whole face. Trixie sincerely wished she could have snapped a picture, if only doing so would not have hurt her credibility, not that she had a camera. "What? But, you... what?" Putting on her most innocent face, Trixie carried on. "I know you didn't seem to like my show, and you could have humiliated me, but you didn't. Unlike the others who tried to ruin it, you just left. That was nice of you." Trixie leaned over the table, bringing herself a lot closer to Twilight, who pushed back a bit into her seat. Twilight's reaction reminded her of a rat backing away from a snake. Wanting to run, but not willing to let the snake out of its sight. Trixie smiled, keeping her amusement at Twilight's reaction hidden as she continued. "Then, when no pony else would have, you saved me. You didn't let the Ursama Minor crush me. You are an amazing unicorn, Twilight. Before you, I never even thought it was possible for a pony to be so good at magic, and you were so humble about it. Then today you sent me my books, and I just had to come and see you. Not in a weird way. Just to thank you, for everything. It was easy to smile, though Trixie had to actively force it away from smug satisfaction and towards grateful. Twilight's face was burning up, and she continuously shuffled her hooves quietly, as if needing the seat cushion in anxiety. Huh? Who knew the princess's student would have such a bad poker face? Trixie watched Twilight struggling to regain her stern composure while she stuttered incoherently. But, well. You, what about the thing you said? You know show-stopping ability? I thought you were angry. Oh. That. Trixie bit her lip, slumping back down on her haunches. She allowed her gaze to trace the wood grains in the floor. I was jealous, okay. Please don't hold that against me. How would you feel if you met some pony who was better at everything? Who could easily replace you if they felt like it? I felt threatened. I'm sorry. But, I'll understand if you don't want to be friends after that. Keeping her head tilted down, she stared at Twilight from under her eyebrows. Twilight averted her gaze, an agonizing, contemplative look on her face. Well, I suppose I do understand what that feels like, a little. After finding the elements, Luna went to Canterlot while Twilight's eyes widened, and she quickly shook her head. A moment later, her eyes met Trixie's gaze again. Annoyingly enough, they were filled with a renewed determination. I chose to stay here, with my friends. They are very important to me. I won't let anything happen to them. That's why I have to ask you again, why are you really here? For one brief moment, Trixie felt her carefully maintained mask crack, slipping out one stray glare at Twilight. She quickly adopted a hurt expression. I don't understand the question. I'm here because we have mutual friends, and I thought we could get along. Clearly losing her patience, Twilight jabbed a hoof toward one of the doorways. A gesture which Trixie took keen notice of. Trixie, I have your book. I know what you are like. It took me a while to work it out, but there is no way I will let one of you near my friends. Feeling the color drain out of her face, Trixie stared at Twilight wide-eyed. It's a bluff. Don't fall for it. Keep a cool head, Trixie. Find out what she really knows first. One of the things Trixie had learned during her stay with Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash was that she was an awful liar and actor when flustered. She had to remain in control. It wasn't difficult to well up a few tears. All Trixie had to do was imagine she'd be forced to leave her precious pair. Suitably sad-looking, she shuffled backwards, away from Twilight. Yeah, you know. I never thought. Oh, okay. I admit it. Trixie closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as though to steady herself, then gave Twilight a fierce look. I like mares. Is that so bad? You didn't have to snoop through my books to figure that out. What are you going to do? Tell them? They already know. Huh. I know. Wait, what? No. No. Twilight quickly waved her for legs as though to ward off the conversation. I don't have any problem with being like that. Her face was as red as a tomato while she attempted to clarify. Whatever a pony does in private is as long as no pony's hurt. Look, that's not what this is about. I meant the Jekyll and Hyde book. Trixie had to fight not to show a grin. She just loved watching Twilight dancing the palm of her hoof. It also helped that the prudish mare was surprisingly cute when squirming, though that was a thought that she rapidly suppressed. The next part was easy enough. Trixie shot Twilight a blank look, tilting her head to the side as though she thought looking at it from a different angle would help. The one about the potion brewing stallion? I never finished it. It was, not to my tastes if you catch my meaning. Was it that bad though? I know it had some violent passages. No. It's, you know, the illusion enchantment? I unraveled a few fragments of it already. It's some kind of spell book, but it's wrong. The almost pleading desperation in Twilight's voice rose, almost as though she truly believed the true contents of the book had merely slipped Trixie's mind, and she was hoping to jumpstart Trixie's memory. Just fragments? Ha, not as powerful as you thought you were, Twilight. Trixie blinked, staring at Twilight with a puzzled look. Shooting a smile, she leaned in with interest. A hidden spell book? That sounds great. What kind of spells did it have? Do you think it might have something to do with Orion Oreo? Inkwell? Oh. Maybe Starswell the Bearded? Ah, wait. I guess the book wouldn't be from that long ago. The story is only 200 years old. Taken aback by Trixie's enthusiasm, Twilight shook her head a little. Clearly unsure of how to proceed, she latched onto Trixie's questions. What? Well, I don't know. I can't read any of the pages in full. As far as if any of those ponies wrote it. I guess it actually could be, if some pony placed the enchantment on the book later, or if it's a copy, or maybe if the illusion changes every few centuries. But why would any pony want to hide a book like that? It's unicorn history. Well, it's only an illusion spell. No pony well serious about magic uses those, right? Maybe it was just a prank? Trixie offered, resisting the urge to bite her tongue for blaspheming against her own magic specialty. I just mean, any magician worth their bits would have used a transmogrification spell. That's what I thought too. Twilight said, smiling. The first genuine smile Trixie had seen out of the mare directed actually at her. The first thing I tried was applying the third and fifth principles of alternation by Ravine the Stone Weaver. Oh, but if it was only an illusion, wouldn't that end up turning the book into a tacker lamp? It did, but I didn't know at the time it was just an illusion. Did you try using Hoofda's theorem? You mean to restore it to its original form? Yes, but that also restored the enchantment. But that gave me an idea. I could try evading illusion entirely, and just remove the enchantment itself. The same way Teal Mithril describes in his book Inane and Impractical Solutions to Unusual Problems. And that worked. I'm more familiar with his contemporary, Evening Star, and she was not very positive about his methods. Despite herself, Trixie found that she actually was having fun discussing how to crack the book with Twilight. It was only now that she realized how much she'd missed having some pony to talk to about magic that didn't involve her bragging about it. He was pretty unorthodox, so at first I didn't bother with it. I had just figured out it was probably illusion magic, so I tried to work with that first. The problem was that I don't know much about illusions, so I didn't get very far before I decided to try a more unconventional approach. It worked. The only setback was that the enchantment was more complex than I thought. So it only revealed small bits. Trixie stared at Twilight. For a moment, she felt actual awe. That can't be right. If it's that complex it should have repaired anything you tried to unravel, unless you threw ridiculous amounts of magic at it. Although she'd known Twilight was powerful, she hadn't expected her to be strong enough to effectively brute force her way through the problem. It was practically cheating. Well, sure, it tried that, but it isn't too difficult to overload. If you can use Hoofda's theorem, you can also overload an enchantment a bit. Twilight chuckled as though it was the simplest thing in the world. Trixie wasn't quite sure if it was false modesty, or an honest misunderstanding of just what was considered normal levels of magic. Actually, I can't use it. It's purely theoretical. Twilight paused, giving Trixie a surprised look. You don't know the spell? But you suggested it? Trixie rolled her eyes. Of course I know the spell. There is a difference between knowing it, and having the raw magic needed to cast it. Oh, right. I guess I never really had the problem, Twilight mused, looking up at the ceiling while stroking her chin. I hadn't even thought about that. So, on what level can you cast? She focused on Trixie again as she asked the question. It was not lost on Trixie that the look on Twilight's face was different. They weren't simply discussing spells now. Trixie was being studied. Under most circumstances, having the undivided attention of some pony would have been great, but this was uncomfortable. Trixie does not want to talk about it, she said, folding her hooves over her chest. Why not? You had some nice tricks during your show. Although, thinking about it, they weren't very magic intensive. Were you pacing yourself? I guess you did just arrive in town. Tricks, she called them. Trixie gritted her teeth while she glared at Twilight. Twilight clapped her hooves together. Oh. And where did you study magic? I saw you had a few books, but you can't be entirely self-taught, right? Did they have a magic exam? What was your result? Oh, I think I still have one due. The great and powerful Trixie does not owe you an explanation. On the one hoof, Trixie knew that if she could get Twilight to dismiss her actual magic prowess, that would be to her benefit. However, every fiber of her being screamed in protest at the thought of allowing any pony to look down on her. Twilight jumped, startled by the sudden outburst. Confusion streaked across her face while she stared wide-eyed at Trixie. Trixie knew exactly what this was about, another attempt by Twilight to show off how much better she was than her. Oh sure, it looked innocent enough to ask about her schooling and abilities, but there was no way that anything she said was ever going to compare favorably to Celestia's personal student. The friendly atmosphere they'd been building up gradually drained from the room. That was, until Twilight did something unexpected. I'm sorry, Trixie. I shouldn't have pushed you. Twilight lowered her head shamefully. It's no excuse, but sometimes I get a bad case of tunnel vision when I find something interesting. Trixie blinked. High and mighty Twilight was apologizing. It didn't quite line up with how she had expected her to react. At the end of the day, Twilight was holding all the cards. She didn't need Trixie, so why would she be at all interested in patching things up with her? Something in her face must have given away Trixie's confusion, as Twilight gave Trixie a sheepish smile. Please don't hold it against me. Recognizing her own line from before, Trixie smirked. When you put it like that, Trixie doesn't have much of a choice, does she? Trixie suddenly realized that at some point she had slipped back into third pony. Fortunately, Twilight didn't seem to mind the change. As long as Trixie made a good first impression, it shouldn't matter. Thank you. Twilight smiled, and looked over her shoulder in the direction that Spike and Fluttershy had gone. They've been gone a while. Maybe I should go check on them. No need. Trixie is sure the delay is caused by Fluttershy attempting to excuse Angel's behavior while he was here last week. Trixie rolled her eyes, exasperated. At least it is nice to know it's nothing personal. He just hates every pony, and dragon. Ha, Spike was going on for days about that. I don't think anything could convince him to look after Angel again. To be honest, I don't think those animals needed any looking after, but we just wanted to put Fluttershy at ease. Well, as much as possible anyway. Considering. Trixie laughed. Considering that you were about to go fight a dragon? Which, by the way, is the worst idea Trixie has ever heard of. We never meant to fight it. Just negotiate with it. How do you even know about this? Come to think of it. Where have you been these past couple weeks? Twilight asked. Couple weeks? Huh, you're right. It feels like it's been much longer. Trixie mused on it for a moment before she recalled the actual question. Anyway. After Trixie's departure, she was injured. Rainbow Dash found her, and got Fluttershy involved. Trixie has been enjoying Fluttershy's hospitality ever since. Technically, None of those statements were lies. Which was the best kind of lie. Oh. They never mentioned it to me. The look on Twilight's face betrayed hurt, and a little bit of suspicion, though she tried to smile. They knew that Trixie did not wish any pony to know she was still in Ponyville. Though Trixie stayed at the hospital for a bit when the Dragon Mountain thing was happening. She was given a very colorful retelling of the events that took place in the evening. Trixie still can hardly believe you all survived. Hey, did Fluttershy really? You know. Really what? Oh. Yes. She scolded the dragon. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. If it wasn't for every pony else corroborating the event, I would have thought I'd imagined the whole thing. If there was any lingering doubt in Trixie that Fluttershy, Dashy and Applejack had been playing a prank on her with that wild dragon story, it was gone now. So is that just a thing now? Are you girls sent out to deal with random problems? Oh, I hope not. I lost a whole day's worth of studying. Not to mention it completely threw off my weekly schedule. I can't just plan in a spare 10 emergency hours to shift around every week. Or can I? Twilight scribbled down some quick notes, apparently revising and editing it several times while she furrowed her brow in concentrations. Okay. No. Maybe. Yes. No. Unless. Well, I can get it down to maybe once or twice in a season. What if I? Apparently, the idea of being sent out to literally do Celestia knows what had Twilight more concerned with how it would affect her schedule, than the actual danger involved. Trixie gawked at Twilight while attempting to wrap her head around how this unicorn functioned with screwed-up priorities like that. Trixie cleared her throat to catch Twilight's attention. But, Fluttershy mentioned that the princess took the elements of harmony with her. Aren't you just normal ponies without those? Glancing up from her notes, Twilight looked momentarily disorientated. What? Oh, that. I'm sure she'll provide them if there is a need for it. Just look at the situation with the dragon. Princess Celestia knew we could manage without them. I'm sure she has everything under control, Twilight said, with absolute certainty. Right. Trixie realized she shouldn't have expected anything else. It must have been reassuring to have such unwavering faith in some pony, but Trixie isn't so sure. Trixie let Twilight get back to her notes. She stared down at her hooves, slowly drawing circles over the floor while she thought about it. Normally, the notion that a team of 6 special ponies took care of Equestria's problems and shouldered the danger themselves would have been nice, if only she didn't love 2 of them. Trixie could only hope she was worrying over nothing. It had only happened twice after all. Trixie? Are you okay? Shaken from her thoughts, Trixie looked up to find Twilight staring at her, looking concerned. Trixie briefly considered telling another lie for the sake of avoiding any potential confrontation, but the fear weighed too heavily on her mind to pass up the opportunity. No, Trixie isn't. How can you be so sure? What if you need the magic suddenly? Sucking in a deep breath, Trixie puffed up her chest to look more imposing. Do your friends have a choice? You can gamble with your own life, but Trixie won't let you drag Fluttershy and Dashy down with you. Twilight frowned. I'd never force any of my friends to do anything. They choose to help me. I didn't even have to ask for it. Hey, I tried to tell them I'd rather deal with it on my own, and they didn't listen. Trixie fought to keep her scowl to a minimum, grinding her teeth to stop herself from blurting out her thoughts. Wouldn't force them? You dragged Fluttershy up that mountain. Apparently taking her silence as compliance, Twilight's expression softened. Look, I understand if you think it is insane. I sure did. But I learned something special about the elements of harmony when we found them. The magic does not go away just because we don't have them. The magic of friendship is inside of us, it always will be. Twilight smiled earnestly while she gestured towards the window. Just a few days ago, I learned that friends can be an amazing source of strength. Fluttershy showed us exactly how strong she could be for us. Do you see? Friendship magic. It did sound insane. But what really worried Trixie was how completely Twilight appeared to have bought into it. She sounded like some kind of cult leader, or follower, considering the leader would have to be Celestia. Does she only teach blind faith? Trixie is glad to have dodged that bullet. Forcing a smile, Trixie nodded faintly. Right. Trixie understands perfectly. Although Trixie tried, the small ember of hope that Twilight would be able to put her mind at ease died. Still, Trixie couldn't fight Twilight openly on this. No good could come from it, and she needed Twilight's trust. Or at least avoid her error. For a while. As long as Trixie had Twilight in a talkative mood, she might as well take advantage of it. Speaking of the magic of friendship, Trixie was hoping that you could tell her about what happened with Night Mammon. Fluttershy told Trixie much, but there were many magic questions Trixie had that she was unable to answer. Especially about the elements of harmony. Could you tell Trixie your version of events? Twilight beamed enthusiastically, pulling 2 books off the shelves as she nodded. Of course. We'll start at the beginning, the tale of the 2 sisters. She presented the first book, an illustrated version of the story. Trixie caught the title of the other book from the corner of her eye, Predictions and Prophecies. She settled in for what undoubtedly would be an extensive essay worth of information.